And greetings, family, and welcome to the Edge Leadership Forum Policy for Liberation, founded by Cindy Suarez, President and Editor-in-Chief at Nonprofit Quarterly. Edge Leadership is a cross-sector network that is designed for leaders of color, creating new forms for a livable future. I'm Nicholas Harvey, President and CEO of Nicholas Harvey Consulting, and former visiting assistant professor in the Public Management and Policy Department of the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies at Georgia State University. Our guest today is a noted public intellectual and public theologian, academic administrator as the 10th president of Morehouse College and 6th president of the Interdenominational Theological Center, a former Ford Foundation program executive, author, mentor, and friend. The Reverend Dr. Robert Michael Franklin Jr. serves as the inaugural chair of the James T. and Berta R. Laney Chair in Moral Leadership at Emory University. Beyond his esteemed credentials and contributions in the public sphere, I invited him here as a point of personal privilege because of who he is in my life. We met while I was a graduate student at Emory University's Candler School of Theology, as he came to Atlanta to serve as the founding director of the Black Church Studies program. He introduced me to the terms scholar pastor and public theologian, which demanded that as a part of our calling, faith leaders must use their intellectual gifts to address the complexities of our human existence, not merely for the sweet by and by, but for the nasty now. Policy scholars are familiar with Aaron Wildofsky's work, Speaking Truth to Power, the Art and Craft of Policy Analysis. Dr. Franklin challenged us to speak truth to power both inside and outside of our communities of faith. In today's terms, while we care for those impacted by the coronavirus pandemic, we will also confront the systems and structures that made an unequal opportunity syndemic. It is my honor to present to you my friend, the Reverend Dr. Robert Michael Franklin Jr. Welcome, Robert. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much, Nick. I'm delighted to be with you. I look forward to our conversation. And please do refer to me as Robert going forward.
Surely. So tell me, as we think about policy for liberation, what comes to mind for you?
Policy for liberation. Policy is a means that enables the end of liberation. There are numerous means. We can talk, and we will talk about that. Various institutional practices, individual practices, such as, for instance, civil disobedience, group practices like protest and social movements, but also deliberations about the promises that government institutions, and for that matter, we could also talk about, although this isn't specifically covered by public policy, the behavior of companies and corporations, which I think needs to be an increasing part of our conversation because of the disproportionate power that corporations wield in contemporary democracy. In any case, all those are means to certain ends. And I think that policy represents one of those I'll say easy to access, easy to influence means of changing government practice and promises to the people.
Mm-hmm. So I appreciate what you share, even though our basic definition of public policy, is what government does or does not do, but that broader understanding that in the midst of policy development, corporate policy is what corporations might choose to engage in or not, particularly in this season where there's a reckoning at a number of levels with regard to social justice for clients, customers, consumers, and the like as well. Yes?
Absolutely. And one of the exciting things that I think, we've taken for granted a long time, but I'm excited to see how students, how younger people recognize immediately that the mobile device they carry in their purse or pockets, and the provider, the carrier, the company from whom they purchase those technological gadgets, really have some moral and social obligations to their consumers and to the larger public. And they can exercise influence on the behavior of the Samsungs and the Apples and Googles of the world by cooperating, supporting, or not doing so, withdrawing support, withdrawing dollars, boycotts, etc. And I think that that connection between the people's voice, the people's movement and action, and public policy or government, and here again, or corporate behavior is so important at this time, as you named it, of reckoning. I think this is a period of American reckoning. And one of the wonderful dimensions of the reckoning is the recognition of the people's power, the people's ability to influence policy and law. And of course, the most important, I have to say this, we're still just 10 months away from the death of John Lewis last July of 2020, is the importance of being willing to take personal risks for the common good. And of course, John Lewis talked about that as making good trouble, not sitting by and watching bad things happen to innocent people, that you have, as he put it, an obligation to speak up, to speak out, to act up and act out if necessary, to ensure that justice be done. Back to the top of the program, that liberation is the goal. And for me, that's about full participation in the benefits and the burdens of American citizenship and the blessings of this democracy.
Surely. And do you think that that we have the sort of the understanding that, with these devices, for instance, that, for instance, some might use it for a flash mob. Well, that can be called for a flash gathering, and down at the state capitol, right? Understanding that there are issues which many people may or may not know, depending upon the locus of their communities, but then it can be used to say, you need to pay attention to this. You think about for how long the water crisis in Flint, Michigan was going on, and no one knew about it. Even the challenges here, our own home, the city of Atlanta, with our own water department and the infrastructure and lead pipes, using those devices. And I think that helps to make it accessible from the idea of policy salience, that understanding that nothing, meaning from a policy perspective, is achieved just by the march. It's then what happens subsequently after that, and keeping people involved and engaged and in touch and enlightened with the given movement.